Over my many years as a comic book reader, I've noticed a phenomenon that I consider quite strange and contradictory. For whatever reason, fans of Western comic books, such as superhero comics like Marvel and DC, typically don't like anime or manga. And in my experience, they don't just dislike it, they're convinced that they'll never enjoy it or they outright hate it. And I've noticed this version of superhero fan since I was a kid, and it's always been really odd to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, because many of the people who are the loudest about disliking manga and anime often have never actually watched it, and instead are just assuming that they'll dislike it based on stereotypes about the medium. Secondly, as someone who learned how to read thanks to comics, I never really distinguished a difference between Western and Eastern comic books. Manga and superhero comics fell into the same category for me, at least for the majority of my life. Lastly, in my experience, most hardcore anime fans don't have a problem with superheroes. Now, most of them aren't mega fans of superheroes, but they either enjoy both manga and superhero content, or they have a positive opinion of superheroes, which makes me even more curious why superhero fans are so against anime and manga. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about this phenomenon and try to make the case that most superhero fans might enjoy anime if they gave it a shot.
Stars and Stripes!
Hello and welcome to another Carrot Scraps video, and by another I mean the 104th. Now, as longtime viewers of the channel know, I like to celebrate different times of the year. In the winter, we celebrate the Carrot Scraps Winter Games, and in the October, we celebrate Creepy Carrot Month. But this summer, I'm proud to announce a new annual tradition in the form of Carrot Scraps Summer. Now, what will we be doing during the Summer of Carrots? Well, I guess I didn't figure that out yet. I thought I came up with this earlier. I know it has something to do with the Hawaiian shirt. So like we're halfway there. Yeah, I guess I'll figure out what the carrot summer thing means later. Let's focus on our topic for today and move on to why I think superhero fans should enjoy anime.
The Oxford Dictionary defines anime as a style of Japanese film and television animation typically aimed at adults as well as children. And Oxford defines manga similarly as a style of Japanese comic books and graphic novels that typically aim at adults and children as well. As you can tell, those are two very general definitions. Now, anime literally just means animation in Japanese. Manga is the name for Japanese comics. So already it's difficult for me to understand how people can be so vehemently against this medium when it's literally just a form of storytelling. It's a little like saying that you're against movies or music. Now, for simplicity's sake in this video, I might use the word anime and manga interchangeably to represent the general industry and the subject that I'm talking about, so I hope you'll forgive that. Now, in my experience in the United States, many people don't recognize that Western comic books aren't just about superheroes. I've been in plenty of situations where I'm talking about comic books, and then the other person will start talking about superheroes as if they're the same thing, which is absolutely not the case. Comic books are a medium of storytelling, and there's a wide variety of genres to choose from when exploring that world. It just so happens that the most popular and profitable stories happen to be superhero comics. Think of blockbuster movies. Just because blockbuster films are the most profitable in Hollywood doesn't mean that they're the only type of movie that can be made. The reason I bring this up is because I think a similar generalization is made when newcomers look at anime. Anime is not just one genre and should not be looked at as a monolith where one represents many. Now, I'll admit oftentimes that anime and manga do share tropes that make it difficult for people in other countries to understand, and I definitely can understand how that might be alienating. But as a general rule, try to remember that anime and manga possess a world of diversity in terms of the stories and genres that they want to explore. And it's possible that a lot of superhero fans have seen something from a genre that they don't like and assumed that all of anime was like that. Now, to be clear about the video and my intentions, I'm not trying to say that all superhero fans must enjoy anime. What I'm saying, however, is that a very specific and popular genre of anime would probably be very appealing to a large amount of superhero fans who think they don't like anime without even trying it. And that genre is called Shonen.
I could have sworn I came up with like a whole thing for like the Summer of Carrots or like the Carrot Summer announcement. I have my summer shorts, you know, they got little palm trees on them and they say enjoy summer. I'm not wearing them though, so maybe that's part of the problem, is that I'm not wearing these. Well, no time like the present.
Returning to Oxford, shonen is defined as a genre of Japanese comics and animated films aimed primarily at young male audiences. Which makes sense because my pre-written definition for shonen goes something like this. Shonen is a genre of anime and manga built typically around action, adventure, or fantasy elements that are generally made with the audience of young boys in mind. Now, I hope I don't need to tell you that young boys are not the only ones who can enjoy this genre, since many of adult men and women absolutely adore shonen. That's just the way that I've heard the genre described in the past. If you've never heard the term shonen before, basically a show like Naruto or Dragon Ball Z is a part of this genre. Now, why do I think superhero fans would enjoy shonen in particular? Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, a superhero story is just a different form of shonen. While a superhero story can be many things, it's hard to argue that the majority of the time, characters with superpowers must navigate a fantastic world of other superpowered beings and either fight to protect the ones that they care about or battle to save the entire world. And to put the cherry on top, most superhero content is based on comic books. And that is exactly what shonen is. Naruto is a story about fantasy ninjas who must defend themselves from enemy villages and factions. But at the heart of that story is a powerful boy who just wants to be accepted and achieve his dreams. Bleach is the story of multiple powerful factions in the afterlife attempting to maintain control or eradicate one another. But at its core, the story is about a boy who wants to protect his friends. To me, these fairly simple story synopsises aren't much different than the story of Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the story of a one-man war on criminal activity where a vigilante attempts to protect the innocent from the powerful and greedy. But at its core, it's the story of a boy who wants to protect his loved ones and most importantly wants to live a normal life. Similar to superhero stories, shonen has their own collection of tropes and cliches that have become staples to the genre, and now they're details that fans are excited about and expect. Shonen fans love seeing enemy factions introduced and celebrate the reveal of character abilities. Oftentimes in shonen, the more bizarre the superpowers are, the more celebrated the fights that involve them become. And once again, to me, the similarities between shonen and superhero stories are hard to deny here. A pretty large majority of superhero conversations when it comes to new comic books released every month are discussions around new teams introduced and the intricacies of how their abilities work. Speaking generally, shonen portrays many stories about superheroes. Even if these characters look differently or their stories are presented differently, I genuinely think that these two mediums are more similar than people give them credit for. And I think if many superhero fans who say they hate anime fought that stigma and tried a shonen series, they might find that they actually enjoy it. It's so odd to me that superhero fans take this stance against anime when there's such a perfect genre of anime for them. And that's generally what I wanted to go over today. But in the interest of fairness, let's go over some of the details that make shonen and superhero stories a little bit different. So that way, if you are thinking of checking out a shonen series because of this video, you have a little bit more context before you go in.
It sucks because it's like on the tip of my tongue. It sounds so good. The summer of carrots. But what does it mean?
So let's start with some of the more major differences between shonen stories and superhero stories. A large majority of shonen writers also function as that story's artist, meaning that when you start reading something like Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, or Bleach, you're reading a story from the writer and the artist at the same time. On the other hand, superhero stories in the West are told by a variety of people and artists picking up after each other. For Marvel Comics specifically, the same ongoing story has been going on since 1961, with an insane amount of creators adding to that tapestry of story. It is impossible over that amount of time to have the same writers for that long. While some might say shonen is better in this regard because it offers a sense of focused continuity, I would argue that neither is better and that both are just different and offer something unique. Even though there are still editors that affect shonen stories more than I would like, something I really do appreciate about shonen stories is that you're getting a very personal experience in a way that you wouldn't from a lot of other mediums. And something that I like about superhero comics is that you're getting the complete opposite. I love that one person can create a character, and if that character didn't have a great introduction, that another writer down the line can make a better story around them. And that is a big part of superhero continuity continuity in my opinion. People taking ideas that people either forget or don't do well and turning them into fan favorite stories in the future. Another important thing to remember about shonen stories is that a lot of them, and the most popular ones, are typically long format. By that I mean it's a story that is oftentimes told over the course of years or even decades. Now, any superhero fan is familiar with long-running continuity. However, in my opinion, as a reader of both, I think there's a greater effort in Western superhero comics to get new readers into modern stories. Whereas if shonen, if you don't read from that first volume, you most likely won't know what's going on 300 chapters later. Although to be completely fair, those first volumes are not just contemporary and easier for modern people to jump into, but they're also very easily available for people to purchase and start reading. Whereas if you wanted to read from the beginning of Marvel's superhero stories, I think a lot of people would be put off by the time that these comics were written. I love the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko Spider-Man run, and I think it's fantastic. But I recognize that it's a little dated for most readers who would probably prefer something newer. And you don't see that problem as often when it comes to the first volume of a manga. Another thing to remember that I mentioned earlier is that there are definitely persistent tropes in shonen that are specific to its country of origin, and that might alienate some viewers or readers from other countries. I don't think this is the biggest deal in the world, I just wanted to acknowledge that I understand why it might be confusing sometimes. I remember growing up and watching an anime called Magical Do-Re-Mi, and one of the characters were embarrassed and so they turned into stone. And my dad was watching the show behind me and I didn't notice, and he asked me why did that character do that? Because the show involved magic, he was worried that they weren't okay or some spell was cast on them. But if you're familiar with anime, you know that that's just a visual joke. And unless you're familiar with that kind of visual humor, you're gonna be confused if you're seeing it for the first time. And I never really considered it until that moment when I was a kid. And I think about it all the time to this day, and so I gotta assume that there are a lot of readers and viewers who watch manga and anime and have a similar response. But I'd suggest rolling with the punches on unfamiliar references and forms of expression. I think that eventually you'll grow to enjoy the little things that you didn't understand at first. Something else that I think is somewhat unique to shonen stories is how overwhelmingly emotional they can be. I'm not necessarily talking about sad emotions. Typically, in my experience, shonen stories present scenarios that encourage viewers never to give up. Now, this sounds generic, but it really is specific to this genre of storytelling in my opinion. Oftentimes in these kinds of stories, the odds are stacked so far against their protagonists, and seeing those characters overcome these obstacles is an overwhelming release of passion. My wife calls it just loving seeing people win. Obviously, Western superhero stories present similar messages of perseverance, but I really do think that shonen presents this kind of story more frequently and in a more unique way. Lastly, as a reminder, shonen is not the only form of anime or manga. If you read Western comics but not manga, and you're not a superhero fan, I can guarantee there's a manga out there if you just look for it. Not all manga and comics are about superpowered people punching each other. Anyway, I just wanted to give those disclaimers to acknowledge that while I think superhero fans would enjoy manga and anime, that I do understand there are some differences that might still cause you to dislike it. But before I go for today, let me give a shonen recommendation that I think might be an easy transition for superhero fans.
I remember coming up with more than just the name. I feel pretty confident that I got further than that, but it doesn't seem like there's any evidence to support that. It feels like I just came up with the name and then I like forgot what I was doing, you know what I mean? I'm really disappointed in myself.
If you're looking for an easy transition from the world of superheroes to Japanese anime and manga, I'd say look no further than the incredibly popular shonen series, My Hero Academia. My Hero is an anime that is actually about superheroes, and I can't think of a better way for a superhero fan who is skeptical about this genre to start watching. My Hero Academia presents a world where most people have superpowers. If you're a Marvel fan, you can imagine a world where it's normal for the majority of the population to have the X gene, only there's no stigma against that reality. Because of the prominence of superpowers, choosing to be a costume superhero is a valid career choice in this world. Superpowered abilities in this world are called quirks, and the protagonist of My Hero Academia is someone who idolizes superheroes but was born without a quirk. Throughout the course of the first couple of episodes, the protagonist is given a quirk by one of the most celebrated and powerful superheroes, and the rest of the series is basically about him living up to that legacy. My Hero Academia isn't my favorite anime, but I think it's a really captivating story that most importantly allows easy access for superhero fans who are skeptical of the shonen genre. My Hero is still presented very differently than typical Western superhero stories, but I'd say that if you're curious about shonen after watching my video, this is a great place to start. Now, I hope you'll forgive me for speaking so generally in this video. As I've said already, obviously not all superhero fans dislike anime and manga, obviously not all anime and manga is shonen, and obviously it's totally fine for superhero fans not to enjoy anime and manga if they don't want to. I just wanted to make the case that for the people who are abstaining from this medium of storytelling, and who know next to nothing about it, that you might be missing out on something that you'd really enjoy. I just wanted to offer another perspective, since I genuinely think that superhero fans and shonen media are a match made in heaven. Or the Soul Society.
It's just like, it's killing me because I wrote it down in big letters, just like Carrot Summer announcement. And then it's like I forgot about the whole idea. There's no other ideas underneath it. It's just a name. Maybe we'll figure it out in another video. And we got a long summer ahead of us, so I guess we'll figure that out later. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. If for some reason you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and to subscribe to my channel for more. As regular viewers know, I make a variety of content on my channel, and I'm always gonna make the videos that I wanna make. But if you see something you enjoy, make sure to let me know, and I'll try to prioritize that kind of content in the future. If you wanna watch me play video games live, check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/carrotscraps, and all my other social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram are at carrotscraps as well. So I wanna thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Even though there are still editors that affect their stories, I like that for the most part, you're getting a very personal story from a shonen story. Wow, story. I'm just talking about stories here. Welcome to the story show. Let's talk about stories. Anyway, that's gonna do it. There we go, everybody.